Welcome to this explainer. Heating accounts for roughly half of a typical home's energy bills. Half. Yet the actual engine driving that massive cost, it's usually completely misunderstood. So today, we're staging the ultimate heating showdown, boiler versus furnace. By the time we wrap up, my goal is to completely demystify all that confusing HVAC jargon, cut right through the noise, and help you pinpoint the absolute perfect heating match for your living space. If you're looking to upgrade, replace, or honestly just understand the machinery keeping you warm all winter, well, you're in exactly the right place.
Okay, let's dive into this. But before we get into the nuts and bolts of how these things work, I actually want you to think about your own home for a second. Picture those really chilly January mornings. Do you have stubborn cold spots in certain rooms? Are you the kind of person who prefers a totally silent, steady warmth, or do you want to feel a blast of hot air the exact second you bump up the thermostat? Keep your own personal comfort preferences in the back of your mind as we start comparing these two very different systems. Because figuring out which one belongs in your home, that's highly personal, and we're going to figure it out together.
So, here's our tale of the tape for today's showdown. We'll be looking at the mechanics, the key differences, the costs and maintenance, and finally, making the decision. All right, let's step into the ring. Round 1, mechanics. Let's look at the fundamental fighting styles of our two contenders.
First up in our corner, we have the boiler. Honestly, the best way to think about a boiler is to imagine it providing a warm, comforting bath of radiant heat for your house. It uses a burner, which, by the way, can be powered by gas, oil, or even electricity, to heat water. That's the key right there. It doesn't heat air, it heats water. It then takes that warmed water and diligently pumps it throughout the house using radiators, baseboard units, or those incredibly cozy hydronic floor loops. And because water has incredible thermal mass, it holds onto that heat way longer than air does. So you get this heavy, even blanket of warmth across your rooms without the system constantly clicking on and off.
Now contrast that with our other contender, the furnace. If a boiler is a warm bath, a furnace is a quick, centralized warm breeze. Instead of water, a furnace warms air directly inside a combustion chamber. Once that air is nice and hot, a big blower motor forcefully shoves it through a massive network of ducts to registers planted in the ceilings or floors all over your home. Now, a massive advantage here is that furnaces usually serve as the backbone of a full heating and cooling setup when you pair them with central AC. The whole shebang in one system. However, because it's literally blowing air around, a furnace can circulate dust and allergens if you aren't on top of your filtration. And that's a pretty big difference in indoor air quality compared to the sealed water loops of a boiler. Let's move to round 2 and see how this builds into the key differences. We really want to examine how these different mechanics directly impact your daily comfort. Now, what's really interesting about this is the sensory contrast. Because a boiler relies on radiant heat emitting from water, the warmth is, well, it's incredibly consistent. You generally completely avoid those rapid temperature swings. It just feels steadily warm all the time. On the flip side, the furnace, total speed demon. It can heat up a freezing home incredibly fast, but it can also create an environment where you might feel drafts or sudden dry air as that blower cycles on and off. So your overall comfort can vary wildly depending on thermostat placement, how well your ducts are designed, and your airflow balance. Actually, I want you to do a quick audit of your home's infrastructure right now. Seriously, look around the room you're currently in. Look up at the ceiling. Check the floors. Scan the bottom of your walls. What do you see? Do you see metal grills and vents meant for blowing air? Or do you see baseboard units, chunky standalone radiators? Or maybe you've got plumbing hiding under those floors. The reality of your home's current layout is often the biggest deciding factor here. If your home is already wired, or plumbed, rather, for hydronics, sticking with a boiler is a no-brainer. If you've got ducts everywhere, a furnace is the natural path. Well, unless you really love the idea of tearing open all your drywall to run new pipes. Now, before we go crowning a winner on energy bills, we absolutely have to talk about efficiency. And here's the truth. Both of these contenders can boast efficiency ratings well into the high 90s, especially modern models. But, and this is a big but, those fancy efficiency ratings are completely meaningless without a few shared factors. Like, how good is your home's insulation and air sealing? Is the system actually properly sized for your square footage? For furnaces, are your ducts leaking 20% of your hard-earned hot air straight into the attic? You can literally buy the highest-rated system on the planet, but if your venting, combustion setup, and local climate design aren't optimized, you're essentially just burning money. Round 3. Let's talk about costs and maintenance. Looking at the financials and the long-term upkeep required for each of these heating heavyweights.
So the crucial point here is that your upfront installation costs are heavily dictated by your home's pre-existing architectural layout. like we just talked about. If you already have ductwork hiding behind your drywall, a furnace installation is super straightforward and highly cost-effective. However, if you wanted to switch to a boiler and you don't have the plumbing for it, oh boy. Adding new piping and radiators is incredibly involved and, frankly, very expensive. But on the flip side, if you're just swapping out an old boiler for a shiny new one on an existing hydronic setup, that transition is remarkably seamless.
Okay, let's talk upkeep. Both systems need regular love, obviously, but the focus is entirely different. With boilers, your HVAC tech is essentially acting as a specialized plumber. Because it's a water-based system, they're intensely monitoring the plumbing and the pressure. They have to meticulously inspect the heat exchanger, check all the pressure and relief valves to ensure it's running safely, and carefully evaluate the water chemistry. That last part is absolutely crucial to prevent the system from literally rusting itself out from the inside.
Now contrast that water focus with the furnace's air-focused maintenance routine. Here, the absolute priority is on airflow and combustion safety. A technician is going to deeply inspect those burners and check out the blower motor. But you know what the biggest takeaway is for you, the homeowner? Regular filtration changes. Furnaces require frequent air filter swaps. If you ignore the filter, or let's say you have 3 heavily shedding pets, basically turning it into a fur sweater, you'll choke the furnace, and that'll cause the whole system to overheat and just shut completely down. There's one more daily living factor we have to touch on: noise. Boilers are definitely the stealthy option. Because they're really just moving water through pipes, they run very, very quietly compared to forced air systems. So if strict noise control is a massive priority for you, a boiler is excellent. Furnaces inherently bring noticeable sounds of rushing air every time they kick on. Although, to be fair, some homeowners actually prefer the gentle white noise a well-tuned furnace provides while they're sleeping. Kind of like a built-in sound machine.
All right, we've made it to the final round, the decision. Let's synthesize all this data so you can crown the definitive winner for your specific living space.
And this brilliantly illustrates our final scorecard. If your priority is radiant, steady heat, standalone warmth, and an extremely quiet environment, and, of course, your infrastructure supports it, the boiler takes the trophy. But if you want rapid heating, you already have central ducts installed, and you really want that system to pull double duty by integrating directly with your central AC, then the furnace is undeniably your champion.
So what exactly do you do next? Well, when you're ready to make the call, take these 3 actionable steps. Step 1. Have an installer perform a strict manual J load calculation. Seriously, guesstimating size based just on square footage is a guaranteed way to completely ruin your efficiency. Step 2. Confirm what fuel sources and venting options are actually available on your specific property. And Step 3. Sit down and rigorously review the expected efficiency ratings and installation details with your HVAC professional so there are absolutely 0 surprises on installation day. Which brings us to our final thought. The right answer here isn't some universal one. It's entirely specific to you. I really encourage you to step away from the screen after this, go look at the vents or baseboards in your own home, and honestly assess your comfort needs. Which system matches your home's DNA and your perfect comfort level? Once you answer that, you are completely ready to make a confident, cost-effective choice about your ultimate heating upgrade. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and hey, stay warm out there.